Well, you probably didn't want to start the morning thinking about last night, but that's what we have to do here on the Morning Pit. Sorry, I hope it doesn't ruin your coffee or ruin your breakfast or get your day off to a bad start. But the reality is, what happened last night happened, and we have no choice but to talk about it today. And whether we talk about it or not, it's not going to change the fact that it happened. So hopefully you've already made your peace with it, and maybe if you haven't, maybe you will by the end of this episode. Of course, it's the Morning Pit here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's on fire on the message boards, as you can imagine. It was last night, during the game, and after the game. It is again this morning. People were fired up in the wake of Pitt losing at Notre Dame 88-81. And there's not much you can say to sort of salvage that one. There's not a whole lot you can do or say to, kind of try to break it in some way and be like, well, it's okay because the most you can say is that everything that they wanted to play for and had to play for, it's still out there for them, right? Like they haven't lost their opportunity in an ACC regular season championship. They haven't lost their opportunity at the number one seed in the ACC tournament. That's all still there. They can still get that by winning at Miami on Saturday, which was always going to be the biggest game. That game on Saturday was always going to be the one that would determine who won the ACC regular season, and it was always going to determine who earned the number one seed in the ACC tournament. That was always on the table in this trip to Miami on Saturday. What last night's game presented for Pitt was an opportunity to clinch a share of the ACC regular season title and a top four seed in the tournament, a double bye in the tournament, not having to play a game until Thursday. That's what it presented. And according to Joe Lunardi, ESPN's bracketologist, they said it during the broadcast on the game that Pitt needed to win one more game to lock themselves into an NCAA tournament spot, whether that win was last night, whether it's Saturday at Miami, or whether it's in the ACC tournament. So you would think that they probably blew the most likely opportunity for a win by failing to beat Notre Dame last night. But there are different ways that might shake out in the ACC tournament that maybe they'll get a favorable draw, particularly, interestingly, if they end up as the 5 seed. We'll talk about that maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but we have to talk about last night's game. And before we start actually getting into the details of it, do me a favor and like this video and subscribe. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the like button's right down there to the right. Click that like button, and then I won't have to ask you about that again. And click the subscribe button. It's right down there. It's a little blue rectangle. It's in that yellow.com. There's a little blue rectangle in there. If you click that thing and turn on your notifications, you'll get an alert sent to your phone every time we post new videos here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It'll come right to you. You don't have to worry about it. Oh, did it get posted yet? Is the Morning Pit out? The Capel press conference come out yet? The Narduzzi video out? Where is it? You don't have to ask. You don't have to worry. You'll get an alert sent to your phone about it. And when we go live for our weekly Panther-Lair show, like we do every Wednesday night at 8:30, or we go live for a post-game show like we did after the game last night, or we're going to do after the game on Saturday, or we're going to do after every postseason game that Pitt plays this year. If you want to make sure you don't miss those live post-game shows, you can get an alert sent to your phone if you subscribe and turn on notifications. So make sure you do that so you never miss any of our video content here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So with this game last night, I've been covering sports, Pitt sports, for a long time, close to 20 years actually. I've been around these programs for a long time. And over the years, you go to a lot of post-game press conferences, you watch a lot of games, you cover a lot of games, you understand how games work, you get a feel for what wins this game, what loses that game. And you get an understanding, and you come to be familiar with how a coach talks about a game and what a coach might say or this or that. And sometimes, I can't count the number of times that I've been in a post-game press conference for a football game, and the coach has stood up there and said, well, we committed these turnovers, and you're not going to win when you commit this many turnovers. You're not going to, it's hard to win a game when you do this with turning the ball over. And almost every time I walked out of it and I said, yeah, you did. You turned it over. But there were also these 5 other things that you did that you as the coach could hold some pretty direct responsibility for. Decisions you made or actions you took that ultimately, could have won you this game. You could have overcome those turnovers. It happens a lot. And it happens in basketball too. Well, when this happens or when that happens, It's hard to win a game, and I feel like it's sort of deflecting and trying to get away from the real reason, the real explanation, which a coach may or may not want to actually admit in a post-game press conference, or they genuinely believe that it is this or it is that, what they're saying, even though it's pretty clear that there was more to it that went into that loss. And so I often shy away from those sort of obvious answers. I think sometimes you do have to look a little more closely to find out what happened in a game and why it happened and how they ended up, losing or winning or whatever it came down to. But in last night's game, I don't think you really need to overcomplicate it all that much. I think the defense in the first half was a big problem. The defense in the first half was really bad. They weren't much better in the second half, but they were better. But in the first half, Notre Dame shot 52% from the floor. They shot 47% from three, 7 of 15 from three, 14 of 27 from, on field goals. And that put Pitt in a giant hole to start this game. They were down 42-28 at halftime. Brutally bad. And it really kind of got worse than that. They were down 20 in the second half. Their defense got a little bit better. Not much, but a little bit better. I know they gave up 46 points in the second half, but 19 of those 46 points came from the free throw line. And actually, Notre Dame only made like 4 baskets in the final 9 minutes of the game, 4 field goals. They shot 12 of 26, I think, from the floor, which is a good shooting percentage, 46%. They were 3 of 12 from 3. And quite frankly, their shooting stats in the second half weren't very different from what Pitt's shooting stats were in the first half, with one giant exception: the free throw line. In the second half, Notre Dame was 19 of 23 from the free throw line. And far less important than what Notre Dame did at the line is what Pitt did at the line. These numbers are almost unbelievable. 20 of 36 from the free throw line, 55.6%, which is actually worse than that, because they were 20 of 36, but that 20 of 36 included 2 missed free throws that were the front end of 1-and-1 opportunities. So you actually had 2 more free throws you left on the court, 2 more points you left at the free throw line, 18 total. You could really say they were 20 of 38, which is actually 52.6% from the charity stripe. You can't shoot 52.6% and hope to win games. Not when you have that kind of volume. If you shoot 52.6% because you were 5 of 11 or something like that, that's one thing. If you're 52.6% because you were 20 of 38, because you left 18 points at the free throw line, you're probably going to lose. And that was the case. And I don't even just look at it and say, well, they missed 18 free throws in a game, they lost by 7. It was 88-81 was the final, but it wasn't a 7-point game. It wasn't a 7-point. It ended up being close, like a 7-point game. But, we know the reality was that was a 14-point game, a 16-point game, an 18-point game. It played out like a game that was in the teens, anywhere from 14 to 18. It played out like a blowout because it was a blowout for the bulk of the game. And until Pitt got it down to 10 or less late in the second half. And so I'm not going to sit here and say, boy, if they just made their 18 free throws, they would have won. They probably would have. But I'm not going to say it because they ended up finishing the game at a 7-point loss. But what I'll say is this. Okay, Pitt came into this game shooting 81% from the free throw line in conference games this year. They were a full 25 percentage points worse from the line in this game last night. I'm not going to say they make all 18 of those free throws and go perfect 38 of 38 in the game. I'm just saying they make, 10 of those extra 18 and finish 30 of 38, which is still not very good. You miss 8 free throws in a game, that's not very good. But if they make just 10 out of those 18 opportunities, maybe at the 4-minute mark, it's not a 14-point game anymore. Maybe it's a 4-point game. Maybe it's a game that's 1 or 2 possessions instead of being 4 possessions, 5 possessions. It's an entirely different game if Pitt goes into the final 4 minutes down 4 as opposed to being down 14. Notre Dame's depth was getting tested at that point. They had 2 guys foul out. They had 2 guys with 4 fouls when the game ended. Notre Dame has shown itself to wilt in those pressure situations. They damn near did it last night in a situation that was far less pressure intense. And they made it into an intense pressure situation, and they've faded in those kind of situations. If Pitt goes into the final 4 minutes trailing by 4 points, I have a whole lot of confidence that Pitt pulls it off. I really do. They've played in these close games down the stretch, and they pulled out victories, more than a few. Meanwhile, Notre Dame has blown more than a few would-be victories in the final stretch. I think if it's a 4-point game, 74-70, with 4 minutes left to play, I like Pitt's chances. I like Pitt's chances to get out of South Bend with a win despite playing a poor first half, despite losing their composure, despite struggling on defense, despite some serious matchup problems and to some extent getting out coached with how Notre Dame was able to generate the matchups that they wanted on the perimeter and inside, in the lane and close to the basket. Notre Dame was able to get what they wanted with Federico guarding out to the perimeter. They were able to get what they wanted when they got their big guys, matched up on Jamarius Burton or Nelly Cummings near the basket. And it happened throughout the night. And whether it was defensive breakdowns, whether it was, coaching, whatever it was, it was bad. And yet they still could have won this game with not even an average free throw shooting performance. Like, I don't even think they needed to be 81% in this game. They could have had, if they made 10 of those 18, 30 out of 38. What is that percentage? Here, let's bring out our calculator here. Now, 30 out of 38 is still 78%. But to be honest, 78%, that's below their free throw shooting percentage in conference games this season. And it's a little bit above their free throw shooting percentage overall this year. So 78.9%, which would be 30 out of 38, is pretty much in line with who this team has been for the bulk of 30 games, or the 29 leading into last night. So we're not even saying they need to shoot above their head or be something they haven't been for 29 games. They just need to kind of be who they were, and last night they very much weren't. And it's funny, I kind of said this a few times. I said it on the live postgame show last night too, that the more free throws they missed, I said this midway through the second half, I said the more free throws they missed, the easier it became to dismiss that game as just sort of a freak of nature loss that kind of came out of nowhere and was pretty atypical and out of character for this team. And it really was, because we're not talking about the early 2000s Pitt teams here that struggled to shoot free throws, that couldn't hit from the line, and maybe kept games closer than they should have been, or lost games because they missed from the line. This is a good 3-point shooting team. Somehow Blake Hinson is not a good free throw shooter, but this is a good free throw shooting team. And they've been good all year. I think they're 77% overall, and like I say, 80.9% in conference games. And you have a huge sample size here, close to 30 games, 29 games overall, 18 games in the ACC coming into last night, where this team had been that good. And all they needed to do was just sort of keep up their performance. They just had to be who they were. They had to be in character from the free throw line, and they likely would have won that game. But they didn't. They missed those free throws. Free throws that could have overcome their poor defensive performance, particularly in the first half. But they missed those free throws. They played that defense. They couldn't make the clutch shot when they needed to make the clutch shot. And there were a couple other instances, where Pitt really had an opportunity. There was a spot, I noted it about 4 minutes into the second half, where Notre Dame had gone up by 16, but Federico made an alley-oop from Jamarius Burton, and then Burton sank 2 free throws to cut it 48-36. And they were one shot away from making a 10-point game and actually kind of battling back. Notre Dame made a 3, but then a key sequence after that, Burton drove, couldn't get the field goal and didn't draw the foul, and then Pitt committed 2 bad turnovers, and they end up going down 17 points again, and it stretches out to 20, and they have technical fouls in there, and they need to get a rebound, but they miss it. Give up points, second chance points. Not a ton of second chance points, but enough to keep stretching that lead. And they could never make the plays. And they made a lot of plays down the stretch, and it was, they scored 12 points, I guess, in the final 2 minutes of the game. Outscored Notre Dame 12-8 in the final 2 minutes of the game. But at that point, you knew it wasn't going to happen because they laid the groundwork for the loss with the poor defense in the first half and all the missed free throws. It doesn't ruin all the hopes and goals and aspirations for this team. Everything they would like to achieve and they want to achieve is still in front of them. And quite frankly, they were always going to have to win at Miami to achieve some of those ultimate goals, to win the ACC regular season championship, to earn the ACC, the number one seed in the ACC tournament. It was always going to come down to the Miami game. But there was an opportunity last night. There was an opportunity to get to win number 22, to get to ACC win number 15, to clinch a share of the ACC regular season championship, and according to Joe Lunardi, to lock themselves into an NCAA tournament spot. Now they need to go beat Miami. Now they need to win games in the ACC tournament. They just made it a little bit more difficult for themselves to accomplish some of those things. It doesn't undo the things that they've accomplished thus far. It doesn't change anything about the first 29 games. It's game number 30. Counts just as much as the 29 that came before it. And while it creates a little bit of extra pressure on the Miami game, again, that game was always going to be the one that determined it. That game was always going to be the one that determined where Pitt would end up. If they beat Notre Dame, like I say, they would have clinched a share of the Big East or the ACC championship. They would have clinched a top 4 seed in a double bye. Now they have to work a little bit harder for it. It's still out there for them. They can still achieve it. And if Duke happens to lose at Carolina, they get a top 4 seed regardless of what they do against Miami. It was a missed opportunity last night. And a disappointing performance, I think, from a team that I think, on the outside, you wanted to see them build momentum heading into the finale at Miami and then the ACC tournament. Heading into the postseason play, you wanted to see momentum build. And instead, it went the opposite direction. Now they have their work cut out for them. They already beat Miami once, but it was a close game. It came down to the final possession, and it was a game played at home. Now you're going to go on the road. It's not going to be easy. It's not unwinnable, but it's not going to be easy. I got a lot of thoughts on that game, and we'll certainly talk about it on tomorrow's Morning Pitt. But, look, one other thought about last night's game. I was trying to look at this. I was trying to think. Who would you say played well in that game? And it's kind of funny. It's a loss. In a loss, it might be tough. But a lot of times you have a loss and you say, oh, well, yeah, so-and-so just played really hard, though, man. He you can't fault him for the loss. I think every player on this team wears this loss. Nobody, Blake Hinson got a double-double. He had 15 and 13. He had 13 rebounds, 15 points. He also had 4 fouls and a technical foul. He had 2 turnovers. Nike Sabandi scored 19. Sabandi, Burton, and Cummings all scored 19 points, but Sabandi had 3 turnovers. Cummings had 2. Burton ended up with 19 points on 8 of 19 shooting. He made 1 3. He was 2 of 4 from the line, but he had 8 rebounds and 2 assists, which tied for the team high with Sabandi, unfortunately. They did not share the ball very well or make good passes here. Sabandi had 4 steals. I just can't, but he was also 7 of 11 from the free throw line and turned it over 3 times. So I can't really, I don't think anybody really played well. Everybody was off their game. Everybody was struggling. I thought they were taking good shots in the first half, and then they just sort of stopped shooting threes in the second half. They made 4 3-pointers in the second half, and 3 of them came in the final 3 minutes of the game. So in the first 17 minutes of the second half, they made 1 3-pointer. I think they were 1 of 3. They weren't even shooting many of them. So I'm not sure about that change. I guess they wanted to try to drive a little bit more, get into the paint and draw contact, go to the free throw line, which is a good plan and often works if you make your free throws. And they didn't. So that plan didn't work. If that ultimately was the plan, sometimes I'm not sure that I saw really what kind of plan there was. Maybe the technical foul on Blake Hinson got in there under their skin a little bit, rattled them a little bit. Whatever it was a bad night. It was a really bad night at the office. Now, fortunately for you, as someone who watches this team, they've had a lot of good nights at the office. Out of their first 30 games, they've had 21 good nights at the office. And there's no reason to think they can't have a few more of those before this season finally comes to an end. It would have been nice to have the one last night. It was a missed opportunity, like I said, but they've got another opportunity, a big opportunity, the biggest opportunity of the season sitting in front of them on Saturday when they go to Miami, and they can play for conference supremacy. And I think there will be a lot. I mean, we know there's a lot on the line, but I think there might even be a few other things that could be on the line when they go to Miami, and we'll certainly talk about that tomorrow. But for now, Pitt's 21-9, 14-5 in the ACC. They get one more chance to do what they set out to do before they head into the postseason. Of course, we'll be live after every game here on out for a post-game show. We did one last night. That was sort of our regular Wednesday night time slot. We pushed it back and started a little bit later to do it after the Notre Dame game. But we'll be live after the Miami game. That's a 6 o'clock tip-off, so probably around 8:15 or 8:30 we'll be live. And then we'll go live after every postseason game, the rest of the season. If you want to be a part of that, because our live shows do tend to draw a pretty big crowd. So if you want to reach Pitt fans, if you have a business and you're trying to get the word out to Pitt fans about what you're doing, contact me on Twitter, and we can talk about some sponsorship opportunities for those post-game shows that we're doing on the postseason games. I think it's going to be fun to talk about these games after every game. So, if you want to reach out to that Pitt fan audience, this is an opportunity to do it. So reach out to us, reach out to me on Twitter, and we'll see what we can set up. You can use the direct message function there. That'll do it for our Thursday edition of the Panther-Lair, or of the Morning Pitt. I get mixed up on which shows we're talking about here, but the Morning Pitt. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate that. And then stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com for all the Pitt sports coverage and the message boards where you can talk to other Pitt fans. Thanks for tuning in this morning. Probably wasn't the best Wednesday night for you, but hopefully Thursday goes much better. We're almost to the weekend. And I'll count it as being at the weekend the next time I talk to you. So that'll be the Friday edition of the Morning Pitt. But hope you have a great Thursday. Hope you have a good, good finish to the week. And we will talk to you tomorrow morning on the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.